You have 30 days to register your private lake with the Eagle Ridge HOA, or we will commence formal absorption proceedings.
That's the letter the HOA president handed me on a Tuesday in May. She was standing on my front porch in northern Idaho. The lake she was demanding I register has been in my family since 1923. The dam that creates it was built by my grandfather and is federally licensed in my name. The HOA she represented had spent the last 4 years building 109 luxury cabins on the lakefront, on land they didn't own. They sold them to buyers from Seattle and Spokane at $500,000 apiece. What that woman did not know was that the lake she was trying to absorb only existed because of a single iron wheel inside the stone dam house. And I was the only living man on earth with the legal right to turn it. Tell me, what would you have done? The lake doesn't appear on most maps. If you look for it on a state highway map of northern Idaho, you'll see a thin blue oval in Bonner County, about 12 miles north of Sandpoint, with no name attached. On the older USGS quadrangles from the 1960s, it shows up as Strickland Pond. On the original 1923 federal dam, license filed with the Department of the Interior, it shows up as Strickland Lake Impoundment, Bonner County, Idaho, Strickland Family Trust, license number 4416. That last name is the only one that matters legally. The rest are nicknames. My name is Holden Strickland. I'm 54 years old, a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and the third generation of my family to be the licensed operator of dam license number 4416. I spent 22 years on active duty designing, inspecting, and operating water control structures across 3 continents. I retired 6 years ago to come home and take care of my father, Owen, who had begun to forget where he was every Tuesday in 2019. My father is in a memory care facility now, in Coeur d'Alene. He's 81. He has good days and quiet days, and increasingly few of either kind. I drive down to see him every Sunday and most Wednesdays. He calls me Cole more often than he calls me Holden. Cole was my younger brother. Cole flew Black Hawks for the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and Cole's helicopter went into the side of a mountain in Helmand Province in 2019. I do not correct my father about who I am. I let him have whichever son he wants on whichever day. Cole left a daughter. Her name is Tilly. She's 17 now, a high school senior in Boise where her mother lives, and she spends every summer up here at the lake with me. She has been doing that since the year Cole died. She is the second most stubborn woman in my family. The first was my grandmother, who would have eaten Tilly for breakfast and admired her doing it. The family property is about 140 acres. Pine, larch, cedar, granite, and one lake of about 47 surface acres, held in place by a small stone dam my grandfather Pendleton Strickland built in 1923 to power a sawmill that is now a pile of foundation rocks under the cottonwoods. The dam still works. It is 101 years old. I inspect it every spring with my own hands, the way my father taught me, the way his father taught him. In the winter of 2020, while my father was still in our old farmhouse, a man named Devlin Vance bought 80 acres of cut-over timberland that bordered the north shore of our lake. Devlin is 56, a former lumber broker out of Spokane who had spent the previous decade flipping commercial buildings and was looking for what he called, in his promotional brochures, a legacy project. The legacy project was Eagle Ridge Lake Lodges. Devlin's company, Vance Lakeshore Development, subdivided the 80 acres into 109 cabin lots. He bulldozed 2 ridges to get the road in. He poured slab foundations across the gentle slope down to the water. He marketed every single lot as Premier Lakefront, with deeded access to a pristine 47-acre alpine lake. He sold them to buyers from Seattle, Spokane, Portland, Coeur d'Alene, and Sun Valley, at prices that range from $400,000 to $750,000 per cabin. He did all of this without ever buying a single inch of lakefront. The lakefront was and is mine. He counted on the fact that my father was already slipping when his sales brochures went to print. He counted on the fact that the Strickland family had not been particularly visible in the region for a decade. He counted on the fact that nobody in his target buyer pool was going to drive up to Bonner County with a 1923 federal dam license and a property surveyor. The day I retired and moved home, he counted wrong. I just didn't tell him for 2 more years. The first knock came on a Tuesday in May. I was at the kitchen window of the old farmhouse, the same farmhouse my grandfather built in 1922, peeling apples from last year's cellar storage for a pie Tilly had requested for her 17th birthday weekend. The dogs were on the porch. A white Cadillac Escalade I did not recognize rolled up the long gravel drive and stopped 20 feet short of the front steps. A blonde woman in a cream linen jacket got out. She was 51 or so, polished in the way new money polishes itself, heavier than her tailoring wanted her to be, carrying a leather folio under one arm. She walked up the porch steps without being invited. "Mr. Strickland, I'm Bridget Lockhart Vance. I'm the president of the Eagle Ridge Lake Lodge's Homeowners Association." "May I come in?" "You may not. What can I do for you?" Her smile thinned by about a 16th of an inch. She did not lose composure. She slid the leather folio open and removed a single sheet of paper, which she handed to me across the threshold, like it was a subpoena. "This is your community absorption notice. As of last month, your parcel falls within the expanded boundary of the Eagle Ridge Lake Lodges Association. We're prepared to extend you full membership courtesy. Annual dues are $4,800, paid quarterly. Your first quarterly assessment is due in 30 days. I read the paper. It was printed on letterhead I had never seen before. It bore the signatures of the Eagle Ridge HOA board, 3 names I did not recognize, and was stamped with a logo that featured a stylized cabin against a stylized lake. The lake on the logo was my lake. I folded the paper. I did not hand it back. "Mrs. Lockhart Vance." "Bridget is fine." "Mrs. Lockhart Vance, my family has held this parcel since 1922 and operated this dam under federal license since 1923. We are not and have never been part of any homeowners association. The Eagle Ridge boundary does not include my land. You have no authority to absorb anything. Mr. Strickland, your father signed a use agreement with my husband in 2020. Per that agreement, your family parcel is integrated with our community for purposes of shared lake amenity." I felt something cold and very old slide down the back of my neck. "May I see that agreement?" She produced it, a 2-page document on Vance Lakeshore Development letterhead, dated October 14th of 2020. My father's signature was at the bottom. The signature was wobbly. The handwriting on the date line was somebody else's. The witness line was signed by Devlin Vance himself. October of 2020 was the month my father first got lost driving home from the grocery store in Sandpoint. It was the month his neurologist formally diagnosed him with moderate stage Alzheimer's. "Mrs. Lockhart Vance, my father was already in cognitive decline when this was signed. He did not have the legal capacity to enter into property agreements. This document is unenforceable. That's a matter for our attorneys to determine. In the meantime, you owe $4,800. Ma'am, please get off my porch." Her face went briefly somewhere very mean. Then it came back. "Mr. Strickland, we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. The Eagle Ridge community is 109 households. We are a substantial economic and political presence in this county now. Your father chose to integrate with us. We are extending you the same courtesy. You may want to think very carefully about your position." She turned. She walked back to the Escalade. She got in. She drove away. I stood on the porch with the folded paper in my hand for a long time. The dogs sat next to me. One of them, a 14-year-old yellow lab named Pendleton, leaned against my leg the way he had been leaning against me since the year my father stopped recognizing him. Tilly was due to arrive that Friday for her birthday weekend. I had a pie to finish. I had been planning to take her out on the canoe at dawn. I went inside. I put the paper in a manila folder marked Eagle Ridge in my home office. I had learned the value of folders in the Army Corps. Every damn dispute I had ever witnessed came down to the same simple thing. The side with the better paperwork won. I drove down to my safe deposit box at the First Bonner National Bank and pulled out the original 1923 dam license, the 1922 deed, my grandfather's hand-drawn surveyor's notes, the federal renewal letters from 1933 through 2023, and the 2019 family trust documents. I drove home. I laid them on my kitchen table. I poured myself a cup of coffee and started reading. I read for 9 hours. By midnight, I knew exactly what Devlin Vance had built on the North Shore, and I knew what he had not built: a single legal claim to the water. Tilly arrived on Friday afternoon in the dust-coated Subaru her mother had given her for her 16th birthday. She is built like Cole was at her age. Tall, lean, dark-haired, with the steady gray eyes our family has been handing out since the Civil War. She dropped her duffel on the porch, hugged me hard for about 3 seconds, and said the thing she always says when she gets to the lake. Hey, Uncle Hold, the water's still cold? It's June, Till. Of course it's cold. Good. She walked straight down to the dock and dove in, fully clothed. The dogs barked. Pendleton, ancient as he was, waded out to his belly and watched her surface. She came up laughing. That is the version of my niece I never want to forget. The next morning, the version I saw was different. Tilly had taken the canoe out at sunrise to fish the South Shore. I was in the kitchen working on a list of records requests when I heard her come back early, hard, with the canoe banging the dock louder than it should. I came out onto the porch with my coffee. She was walking up the path very fast. Her face was the color her father's used to get before he said anything sharp. Uncle Hold, 2 guys in matching polos just told me I had to leave the South Shore. They said it was closed for Eagle Ridge community programming. I set my coffee down. Did they touch you? No. Did they identify themselves? They said they were Eagle Ridge Lake safety coordinators. One of them tried to take a picture of me with his phone. Did you let him? No. I told him my uncle is an Army Corps colonel, and he can take it up with him. They left. Tilly. Yes. You did the right thing, but I want you to stay closer to the dock for a few days, okay? Okay. There is a particular cold that settles in a man's chest when somebody tries to bully a teenage girl who happens to belong to him. I felt that cold on the porch in June. That night, after Tilly was asleep, I made a list. File a Freedom of Information Act request with FERC for the complete history of dam. License number 4416. File public records requests with Bonner County for every building permit, septic permit, and shoreline variance issued for Eagle Ridge since 2020. Retain environmental counsel. Test the lake water. And, hardest of all, talk to my father one more time while there was anything left to talk to. The next morning I drove down to Coeur d'Alene. My father was in his usual chair by the window. He was lucid for about 11 minutes, which was longer than he had been any visit in the last 6 weeks. I sat across from him and asked him, gently, if he remembered signing any papers for a man named Devlin Vance in 2020. He looked at me a long time. Holden, he said. The name landed clean for the first time in months. Yes, Dad. He came 3 times. He had a folder. He said it was to renew the dam license. He said the lake board needed me to sign a renewal. What did you sign? I don't remember. I signed where he pointed. That's all right, Dad. You didn't do anything wrong. Holden. Yes. Did I sign away the lake? His voice was small, smaller than I had ever heard it. No, Dad, I said. You couldn't have. You didn't have the legal capacity by then. Nothing you signed in 2020 is enforceable. He looked out the window. A robin moved across the lawn. He was a polite man, my father said. I'm sure he seemed that way. He didn't answer. He had gone wherever he goes now between sentences. I held his hand for another 40 minutes. He called me Cole twice. I did not correct him. That weekend I retained an environmental attorney out of Boise named Vaughn Pemberton. 68, silver-haired, slow-talking, 36 years of practice in water rights and dam licensing. He read my file in 4 hours and called me back the same evening. Holden, you realize what your grandfather did in 1923? I think so. He didn't build a pond. He built a federally regulated impoundment under what is now FERC jurisdiction. You don't just own the water. You own the legal authority to make the water disappear. I know. Have you ever exercised the drawdown authority? Not for 16 years. Not since the last maintenance cycle. Vaughn was quiet for about 10 seconds. Holden, he said, if you want to take 109 cabins off a lake without touching a single one of them, all you have to do is open the spillway, and the United States Department of Energy and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission will protect your right to do it. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. The wind was moving in the pines. The dogs were asleep at my feet. Somewhere on the South Shore, a loon called. Vaughn, how long until I can make that legal? 6 months, maybe 7. I can wait. Devlin Vance pushed first. 2 weeks after Bridget's porch visit, I received a certified letter from Vance Lakeshore Development's in-house counsel. The letter informed me that Eagle Ridge Lake Lodges had filed a quiet title action in Bonner County District Court asserting shared ownership rights to the impoundment commonly known as Strickland Lake, based on, among other documents, the use agreement my father had signed in 2020. A quiet title action, for those who have never had the pleasure, is a lawsuit that asks a judge to declare ownership of disputed property. If you don't respond within a specific window, the judge can grant the title by default. It is the kind of legal move that depends entirely on the other side, either missing the deadline or being too overwhelmed to respond well. Devlin had filed his on a Friday afternoon of a holiday weekend. The deadline was 21 days out. He had counted on me not noticing for 19 of them. Vaughn filed my answer on the following Monday. The answer was a 31-page document that walked the court through the 1923 federal license, the 1922 deed, the chain of title from my grandfather Pendleton through my father Owen to me as trustee, the 2019 family trust transfer, the medical records that established my father's cognitive impairment by August 2020, and the legal incapacity of any use agreement he had signed thereafter. Attached as Exhibit A was a notarized affidavit from my father's neurologist, Dr. Annabelle Whitaker, attesting that Owen Strickland had been formally diagnosed with moderate-stage Alzheimer's in October 2020 and lacked the legal capacity to enter into property agreements by that date. Vaughn told me later he had never enjoyed filing an answer more in his life. Devlin and Bridget responded by escalating in the way that overconfident developers always escalate. They went to the press first. The Sandpoint Sentinel ran a story under the headline, "Lake Dispute Threatens Eagle Ridge Community." It quoted Bridget extensively and described me as a reclusive retiree attempting to claim sole ownership of a regional recreational asset against the wishes of 109 families who had purchased their dream of lakefront living in good faith. The story did not mention the 1923 federal license. It did not mention my father's diagnosis. It did not mention the price tags on Devlin's cabins. I did not respond. Vaughn told me not to. Then Bridget began the public pressure campaign. She started a community Facebook group and posted daily. She organized community walks along the public road outside my property, in which groups of Eagle Ridge homeowners took photographs and talked loudly about my selfish hoarding. She arranged a candlelight vigil at the entrance to my driveway. She paid 2 former buyers to write letters to the Bonner County Commission demanding my dam license be reviewed. None of it worked. The commission declined to act. The vigil drew 11 people. The Facebook group had 300 members, 200 of whom were Eagle Ridge homeowners. What it did do was give me time. While Bridget posted, I tested the lake. I drove a sampling boat to 17 points along the shoreline, collected samples in sterile glass jars, and sent them overnight to a certified lab in Spokane. The results came back 12 days later. They were appalling. Coliform counts at the North Shore were 200 times the federal safe limit. E. coli was present in 9 of 17 samples. Nitrates were elevated across the entire developed waterfront. Phosphorus was running at levels that would normally signal a slow ecological collapse over the next decade. The lake my grandfather had built, the lake my father had fished as a boy, the lake Cole and I had learned to swim in, was being silently poisoned by improperly permitted septic systems, serving cabins that did not belong on its shore. I called Vaughn, and Holden. I have the water results. How bad? Bad enough for the EPA. There was a pause on the other end. Holden, he said, we just turned a quiet title action into a federal environmental case. Yes, we did. You ready for what comes next? Vaughn, I said. I have been ready since my niece came back from the South Shore in tears. Okay then. He made the call to the EPA that afternoon. The investigation opened the next week. The federal layer changed everything. EPA Region 10 dispatched an investigator named Lou Bartholomew. Lou was 59, balding, easygoing in the way only veteran inspectors can be easygoing, and he had been doing this job for 27 years. He arrived on a Thursday in a beige government truck and spent 6 full days walking the development with a clipboard, a soil probe, a water sampler, and an expression that grew steadily darker. Of the 109 cabins, 63 had been built with septic systems that did not meet Idaho DEQ standards. 22 had no permits on file at all. 11 had been connected to a shared community drain field that turned out, on inspection, to be a hand-dug trench feeding directly into a seasonal creek that fed into my lake. Devlin Vance had been quite literally piping raw effluent into my water for 4 years. But Lou's investigation surfaced something else. While walking the permits at the county clerk's office, Lou met a soft-spoken older woman named Hattie Branscombe, deputy county clerk for 31 years. Hattie had been waiting, she told Lou, for somebody federal to come ask the right question. When he asked, she answered. The right question was who had approved Eagle Ridge's original development plat. The answer was the Bonner County Planning Commission. The chair of that commission in 2020, when Eagle Ridge was approved, was a man named Carter Vance. Carter Vance was Devlin Vance's first cousin. The recusal box on the Eagle Ridge approval vote was unchecked. Carter had voted yes on his own cousin's development and on every subsequent variance, every permit extension, and every shoreline encroachment Eagle Ridge had requested in the 4 years since. Lou brought all of this back to me on a Sunday afternoon over coffee at my kitchen table. Vaughn was on speakerphone from Boise. Tilly was at the counter, pretending to read a magazine and absolutely listening. "Holden," Lou said. "We have a federal Clean Water Act case, a state environmental quality case, a county conflict of interest case that probably puts Carter Vance in front of a grand jury, and a private civil case where Devlin has been selling cabins to 200 out-of-state buyers under fraudulent lake amenity disclosures. What about Bridget? She signed the absorption notices. She signed the threats. She organized the community pressure campaign. Conspiracy is a beautiful charge in cases like this. She'll be in the federal indictment with her husband." I sat with that. "Vaughn?" "Yes. What if we don't break the story the way you all are imagining? What did you have in mind? A scheduled maintenance drawdown of the lake?" Lou and Vaughn were silent for about 4 seconds. Then Vaughn very slowly said, "Holden, if you exercise your drawdown authority while the EPA inspection is active, the entire developed shoreline becomes exposed for federal examination at the same moment the world learns about the fraud." "Yes." "In one afternoon?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" I looked at my hands. They had built bridges in Bosnia, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and they had held my father's papery hand the previous Sunday in Coeur d'Alene. "Vaughn," I said, "my grandfather built this dam to power a sawmill. The sawmill is gone. The lake is still here, and the lake belongs to the family that built it. Let's let the country see what's been done to it." Tilly looked at me a long moment. Then she said, very softly, "Uncle Hold?" "Yes." "Now that's so cool. A scheduled maintenance drawdown under FERC license is a formal process. It is not a man losing his temper and opening a sluice gate. It is paperwork, notice periods, public posting, environmental review, fish and wildlife coordination, downstream notification, and finally, on a specific date authorized by the federal government, the slow opening of a control structure. I spent the next 11 weeks building it the right way. First, I filed a notice of scheduled maintenance drawdown with FERC's Pacific Regional Office. The filing cited the standard 10-year inspection cycle for the dam, which was, in fact, overdue. It proposed a 12-foot drawdown of Strickland Lake from its normal pool elevation to the maintenance pool elevation. The drawdown would occur over 18 to 24 hours. The lake would be held at maintenance pool for 14 days, while the dam structure was inspected, after which it would be refilled by natural inflow over 90 days. The filing was, on its face, completely routine. Hundreds of small dams across the United States perform similar drawdowns every year. FERC approved the filing in 19 days. Then I filed a coordinated notice with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality requesting a courtesy inspection window during the drawdown period to evaluate exposed shoreline conditions adjacent to upstream development. DEQ approved within a week. Then Vaughn filed a separate notice with EPA Region 10, requesting their continued inspection access. Then we sent certified letters to every one of the 109 Eagle Ridge cabin owners. The letters were polite, clinical, and very clear. They informed the recipient that Strickland Lake was a federally licensed dam operation, that a scheduled maintenance drawdown was coming on a specific date, that their developer had no recorded ownership of any portion of the lake or shoreline, and that they may wish to consult counsel about their purchase agreement. Vaughn estimated about 95% of those letters would lead to a phone call to a lawyer within a week. He underestimated. It was 100%. Meanwhile, Tilly turned 18. She came up from Boise for the last weekend of June. She had finished her senior year and would start at Idaho State in the fall, studying environmental engineering. She walked into the kitchen with 2 backpacks and a small wrapped present she handed me before I could even hug her. It was a brass key on a leather lanyard, mounted in a small wooden frame. Under the key was an engraved plate that read, Assistant Operator, Strickland Lake, FERC License 4416, Second Generation, Succession Designate, T. Strickland, 2024. I looked at my niece. I had it made at the trophy shop in Sandpoint, she said. It's not legal, yet, but I figured we should start now. I could not speak for a moment. Oh, Uncle Hold. Yes, I want to be the next one. Okay? Okay? Okay. She hugged me. Pendleton barked at the door. The wind moved in the pines. Vaughn came up the following Wednesday for a planning meeting. He brought Lou Bartholomew, an EPA team lead named Margaret Forsyth, a state hydrologist named Reese Calloway, and Bonner County Sheriff Wallace Trent, a quiet man who had known my father for 40 years and had been waiting, like Hattie Branscombe, for the right question. We mapped the entire operation. The drawdown would commence at 6 a.m. on a Saturday in late August. Federal, state, and county personnel would be on site by 5. Press would be notified the morning of, with credentials issued through Sheriff Trent's office. The Eagle Ridge HOA would be served the same morning with a federal cease and desist on shoreline access. The lever, actually a 5-foot iron control wheel, would be turned by me in person at 6 a.m. The wheel had not been fully opened since 2008. I had inspected the mechanism the previous Saturday. It still moved. My grandfather had built the linkage to last a century. He had outdone his engineering by 20 years. Wallace Trent looked at me across the table at the end of the meeting. Beg Holden, this is going to be the strangest thing this county has seen since the river froze in 1973. Probably. You want me to go on record with the press? Well, Wallace, I would appreciate it. All right then. 3 days before the drawdown date, Vaughn called me with an update. Holden, Bridget filed an emergency motion to enjoin the drawdown. Filed where? It's Federal District Court, Idaho. She is on the record attempting to legally block the FERC-authorized operation of a federally licensed dam. How did the judge rule? He laughed at her, Holden. He literally laughed. The order was denied in 40 minutes. I did not laugh. I poured myself a glass of cold water and walked down to the dam house to check the wheel one more time. Bridget's last week was the loudest of her life. I will say this much for her. She did not quit. She did not even slow down. The denial of the federal injunction would have caused a more rational opponent to stop and think very carefully about the legal weather coming in over the Selkirk Mountains. Bridget responded to it by escalating in every direction available to her at once. On Tuesday, she organized a Save Our Lake protest on the public county road outside my driveway. 47 Eagle Ridge homeowners showed up, plus 11 of Bridget's hand-picked HOA volunteers in matching teal polos, plus 3 local news vans she had personally called the night before. They chanted my name for 20 minutes. They held signs that read, "Don't drain our dream," and "Family man" or "Family tyrant." They blocked traffic on the county road until Sheriff Trent's deputy gently asked them to move to the shoulder. I watched from my front porch with a cup of coffee. Tilly stood beside me, eating a peach. Uncle Hold. Yes. This is unreal. It is. Are you going to say anything to them? No. Why not? Because they don't know yet. By Saturday they will, and the ones who matter will be apologizing to us. She bit into the peach and watched the chants slowly run out of steam. On Wednesday, Bridget filed 3 more legal motions in 3 different courts. State District Court, requesting a temporary restraining order, State Environmental Court, requesting an emergency injunction, and Federal Court, requesting reconsideration of the original motion the judge had denied on Monday. All 3 were denied within 48 hours. The federal judge wrote in his second denial order the single sentence, "The court has previously addressed this matter. The court declines to do so again." On Thursday, Bridget tried to call me personally 7 times. I did not answer. She left 3 voicemails of escalating shrillness. Vaughn transcribed them and added them to our litigation file. The 3rd one ended with the phrase, "You have no idea what kind of community you are about to destroy," which Vaughn circled in red and noted in his neat hand, "ADD to intimidation count." On Friday, she did the stupidest thing of all. She drove to my driveway at 4 in the afternoon, with a contractor's truck following her. and stationed a 4-man crew at the entrance to the property. The crew began unloading a chain-link gate, a banner that read, Eagle Ridge Lake Community Entrance, and 4 metal stakes the size of Major League Baseball bats. I came out of the house in my work boots. Tilly came out behind me with her phone already recording. Mrs. Lockhart Vance. Mr. Strickland. What are these men doing on my driveway? They are installing community signage at the new entrance to the Eagle Ridge Shared Amenity Access Road. Ma'am, this is my private driveway. You and your crew are trespassing on my land. Please leave. This is now community access, as of the filing we made this morning, which was denied by a federal judge an hour later, Bridget, as you know. Her face went, for the first time, the color of slate. Mr. Strickland, you were about to make a very bad decision. No, ma'am, you are. Tilly, please call Sheriff Trent. Tilly already had him on the line. She handed me the phone. Wallace listened for 30 seconds, asked for the address, and said calmly, Tell Mrs. Lockhart Vance she has 9 minutes before a deputy arrives. After that, the trespass becomes formal. I conveyed Wallace's message word for word. Bridget stared at me a long moment. Then she turned to the contractor crew, who were staring at her with the increasingly uncertain looks of men who had not been told they were committing a crime. Put it all back, she said. We'll come back later. Ma'am, we will not come back later. Sheriff Trent's deputy will arrive in approximately 7 minutes. If you are not gone, you will be cited. The crew will be cited. The truck will be impounded as evidence. This isn't over, Strickland. It is for today, Bridget. She got in the Escalade. The crew threw the chain link back in their truck and followed her down the county road like a small parade of bad ideas. Tilly was still recording. She lowered the phone and looked at me. Uncle Hold. Yes. I think she's going to do something even worse tomorrow. I think you're right. What are you going to do? I looked at the lake. The water was very still in the late summer light. A pair of loons was floating about 100 yards from the dock. Somewhere in the dam house, a 5-foot iron wheel was waiting for 6 a.m. on Saturday. Tomorrow at dawn, I said, I am going to turn the lever. Bridget did do something worse. She did it at 3:47 in the morning, in the dark, with a pair of bolt cutters and absolutely no understanding of what she was about to walk into. I was up. I had been up since 2:30. I had not slept well, and the operations checklist for the drawdown had been running through my head on a loop. I was in the kitchen, in my work clothes, drinking the 3rd cup of coffee of the early morning, when the dogs went off at the back door. Not the warning bark, the other one. The deep, low chest bark Pendleton had reserved for exactly 2 events in his life. A black bear at the porch in 2018, and the day Cole's flag-draped casket came up the driveway. I went to the kitchen window. Tilly came down the stairs in her sleep shirt, already pulling on a hoodie. Uncle Hold, someone's down at the dam house. I see. The motion light over the dam house had come on. It was 120 yards down the slope from the back porch, half hidden by cedars, and from the kitchen window, I could see only a corner of stone wall and a flash of cream-colored linen jacket moving across the path. Bridget had bolt cutters. She was working on the padlock that secured the door of my grandfather's dam house, the padlock my father had put on it in 1989, reinforced on the inside by a 2nd lock, a 3rd lock, and a steel deadbolt I installed in 2020 when I came home. She was not going to get through it, but the security camera I had installed in May, mounted in the cedar tree behind the dam house, was already recording her in 4K resolution under a generous halogen floodlight, and the dam house door was, as of the certified letters we had sent every Eagle Ridge homeowner, a federally protected facility under FERC license. I called Wallace Trent. He picked up on the 2nd ring. He had been awake. Wallace. Holden. Bridget is at the dam house with bolt cutters. She is attempting to access a federally licensed structure. There was a pause of about 1.5 seconds. I'm 14 minutes out. I will have 2 deputies and the dam house cam recording on the way. Do not engage. I will not. Holden. Yes. Today just got easier, didn't it? Yes, it did, Wallace. I hung up. I turned to Tilly. She was at the kitchen window, watching, very still. Waddle. Yes. Go upstairs, pack your camera and your notebook, and meet me on the back porch in 5 minutes. Yes, sir. I have never heard her use that phrase before. She used it once, that morning, in the kitchen, in the dark, at 4 in the morning, before the strangest day of my life. I walked out onto the back porch with my coffee. The dogs followed. Pendleton kept low and quiet beside me. I sat in my grandfather's wooden rocking chair and watched the corner of cream linen flicker through the trees as Bridget tried and tried and tried to open a door her bolt cutters were never going to defeat. She did not see me on the porch. The light was wrong. The shadows were good. I sat there for 11 minutes, in silence, while a 53-year-old HOA president in linen pajamas with jacket destroyed her own legal future under a halogen floodlight 120 yards from my back porch. At 4 minutes to 4, the dogs lifted their heads. The first set of headlights appeared at the top of the driveway, Wallace Trent's Tahoe. Behind it, 2 deputy units. They came down the gravel slowly, with no lights, deliberate as a tide. Bridget did not hear them until they were 30 feet away. She turned. The bolt cutters dropped from her hands and clattered on the stone path. Her face, lit by the halogen, went through the same 3 stages I had watched it go through on my front porch in May. The corners first, then the eyes. Then everything around the mouth fell at once. She tried to run. She made about 6 steps up the slope before Deputy Marin Holloway, a former cross-country runner from Sandpoint High School, reached her and very gently, very professionally, asked her to stop and place her hands on her head. Tilly came out onto the back porch beside me. She was holding her camera. Uncle Hold. Yes. Is this real? It's real. Are you going to do the drawdown today? Enviat. I looked at my watch. 5:17 a.m. The sky was beginning to turn the color of new pewter behind the Selkirks. Lou Bartholomew was due to arrive at 5:50. Margaret Forsyth from EPA at 5:45. Reese Calloway from State at 6. 2 press-credentialed reporters from the Spokesman Review and a Boise NPR affiliate, 6:15. The drawdown commencement, 6 a.m. on the nose. Yes, I said, right on schedule. Tilly nodded. Uncle Hold. Yes. Can I hold the key? I unclipped it from my belt and put it in her palm. She closed her fingers around it. Let's go, she said. The first news truck pulled into the gravel turnaround at 5:58 in the morning. By 6:05, there were 4. By 6:20, there were 11. KREM out of Spokane, KHQ out of Coeur d'Alene, a Boise NPR truck, the Spokesman Review, the Sandpoint Sentinel, 2 regional TV affiliates, and a freelance photographer from National Geographic who had been at a friend's cabin nearby. I will admit in retrospect that I had underestimated how many people were interested in the story. By 6:03, Federal Inspector Margaret Forsyth stood next to the dam house with her clipboard and her EPA windbreaker. Lou Bartholomew was beside her. Reese Calloway was beside him. Sheriff Wallace Trent stood at the property line with 2 deputies, while Bridget sat in the back of one of the cruisers, no longer in linen, wrapped in a wool blanket, head down, no longer crying because she was past the part of the morning where crying still felt useful. Devlin Vance was not on site. Federal agents from the FBI Spokane office had executed search warrants on his home and his development office at 5:45 a.m. He was, at that moment, in his bathrobe answering questions about his septic permits. At 6:04, I walked into the dam house. Tilly walked in behind me. The dam house is a stone-walled chamber about 12 by 10 feet, with a cedar plank floor, a single east-facing window, and a 5-foot iron control wheel mounted to a brass and steel linkage that descends into the spillway housing. My grandfather built the wheel in 1923 from castings he had commissioned in Spokane. It still bears his initials, PS, cast into the upper rim. The leather grip is the same leather my father rewrapped in 1979. I checked the brass dial. Closed. I checked the secondary lockout pin. Disengaged. I checked the federal authorization sheet I had clipped to a hook on the stone wall the night before. Signed by FERC. Signed by EPA. Signed by Idaho DEQ. Signed by Sheriff Wallace Trent as witness officer. I checked Tilly's face. 18 years old, in jeans and a flannel and a wool watch cap, holding her camera at her side with the lens cap off. Cole's daughter, my niece, my family's second-generation operator. Yes. Want to do the first quarter turn with me? Yes, sir. She stepped beside me at the wheel. We put our hands on the leather grip together. Hers were smaller than mine, but stronger than they had any right to be at 18. The wheel resisted for the first half-inch with the weight of 16 years of disuse, and then it broke free with a soft metallic shudder I will remember on my deathbed. We turned it, 1/4 rotation. The spillway gate below cracked open by 6 inches. The lake began to fall. You could not see it at first. A 47-acre lake does not respond instantly to a 6-inch gate opening, but the sound changed. A new note entered the morning, the low, rolling rumble of water going through a spillway it had not gone through in years. The sound carried up the slope. The dogs heard it first. Then the journalists heard it. Then everyone heard it. We finished the rotation in 3 more quarter turns, over 12 minutes. By 6:22, the spillway was fully open, and Strickland Lake was draining toward maintenance pool elevation at the federally authorized rate of 1 inch per minute. I came out of the dam house with Tilly behind me. Margaret Forsyth and Lou Bartholomew were already walking the exposed shoreline with their cameras. Within 90 minutes, they would photograph 31 illegally constructed septic discharge pipes, 4 shoreline encroachments that crossed my property line by over 40 feet, and 1 collapsed footing pad that suggested a lakefront cabin had been built without an actual foundation inspection. The Spokane reporter, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Adrienne Halloran, walked up the path and asked if I had a statement. I did. My name is Holden Strickland. I am the 3rd-generation licensed operator of Strickland Lake under federal dam, license number 4416, originally issued in 1923. The dam that creates this lake was built by my grandfather. The land it sits on has been in my family for 102 years. The cameras held me. 4 years ago, a developer named Devlin Vance built 109 cabins on land bordering this lake and sold them to families across the Northwest as lakefront properties. He did so without ever owning 1 inch of the lake or its shoreline. His buyers were deceived. His HOA president on this property at 4 a.m. this morning attempted to break into a federally licensed dam structure with bolt cutters. She is currently in the back of a sheriff's vehicle. A small noise went through the press. The lake the developer sold to 109 families is now draining for federally authorized maintenance. The shoreline is being inspected at this moment by the EPA for the illegal septic discharge that has been poisoning my family's water for 4 years. I paused. I looked at Tilly. To the cabin buyers, you are victims of a fraud. Your contracts are being reviewed. There will be a path to relief. I will be a witness for every one of you in any case you bring. I paused again. And to Mrs. Lockhart Vance, who tonight tried to take the door of my grandfather's dam house off its hinges. Ma'am, the door is 100 years old. So is the family that built it. Some doors are not meant to open from the outside. I walked back up the slope. The lake kept falling. The legal aftermath unfolded faster than anyone predicted. Devlin Vance was indicted federally on 21 counts spanning the Clean Water Act, mail and wire fraud, conspiracy, and false statements to federal regulators. He pled out to 12. He is currently 3 years into an 8-year sentence at FCY Sheridan in Oregon. Vance Lakeshore Development was dissolved by the state of Idaho 6 months after the indictment. All corporate assets, totaling about $18 million, were placed in a court-supervised trust to compensate the cabin buyers. Bridget Lockhart Vance was indicted on conspiracy, attempted breaking and entering of a federally licensed facility, intimidation of a witness, and 3 counts of false statements in the absorption notices. She pled to 7 counts. She served 11 months in a federal women's facility in Phoenix. She lost the Cadillac, the house, and most of the linen. Carter Vance was removed from the Bonner County Planning Commission within 2 weeks and faces ongoing state ethics charges. He has retired to a small condominium in Lewiston. The cabin buyers, I have come to learn, are a more sympathetic group than I had let myself believe. Most were school teachers, dental hygienists, retired engineers, software designers, and one obstetrician who had spent her savings on what she believed was her first and only lake house. About 60 settled through the Vance Trust at roughly 70% of purchase price. About 30 walked away with title to land they now legally own, though no longer on a lake. 19, the most underwater, are still in litigation. The lake, since the drawdown, has been refilled to its normal pool elevation. The illegal septic outflows have been removed. The shoreline has been restored by a state-federal partnership that took 14 months to complete. I took none of the recovered legal funds personally. The amount the trust owed me for trespass, intimidation, and federal facility intrusion was directed by my request into a new fund. We called it the Cole Strickland Memorial Lake Restoration Fund. Cole, you may remember, was my brother. He flew Black Hawks. The fund operates as a small private foundation that pays for native fish restoration, shoreline rehabilitation, and small dam licensing assistance for working-class families across the inland Northwest who hold old federal licenses on family lakes and cannot afford to maintain them. In the last 15 months, the fund has assisted 19 families in 3 states. My father Owen passed in February of last year. He was peaceful at the end. The last thing he said to me was, "Holden, did we take care of the lake?" "Yes, Dad, we took care of the lake." "Good." He closed his eyes. He did not open them again. We buried him on the south shore of the lake, at the spot where he taught Cole and me to fish for cutthroat trout in 1979. There is a small stone with his name and the years, and a single line my grandmother once said about him at a family Christmas dinner when he was 8 years old. The line is, "He was always going to be a steady one." Tilly is 20 now. She is in her second year at Idaho State, studying environmental engineering, and she comes home most weekends. She has, at her own insistence, completed the federal training course required to be a backup licensed dam operator. The license transfer paperwork is filed. The brass key she gave me 4 years ago is now legally hers as well as mine. Last weekend she sat with me on the dock at sunset. The native cutthroat trout were rising in the shallows. The loons were calling from the south shore. The wind was moving in the pines. Pendleton, 14 years older than he should have been, slept at our feet. Uncle Hold. Yes. You ever miss not having had your own kids? I thought about that for a long time. I had 2, I said finally. I just didn't always know which one I had on which day. She bumped my shoulder with hers. We watched the trout rise. If you have made it this far, do me one small favor. If you have ever had a developer, an HOA, or a fake authority try to build something they had no right to build on land or water that belonged to your family, drop a note in the comments below. Tell us about it. Tell us where you are watching from. Someone reading needs to hear your story. And if you want to see the next case, the one about the HOA treasurer who tried to seize a Korean War veteran's pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you are subscribed. We post a new story every week. I'll see you on the next one.
What really happened here is simpler than the headlines made it look. Holden Strickland did not win because he was loud. He won because he was the only one who actually read the 1923 paperwork. For 4 years, a developer counted on nobody pulling the original dam license, on an aching father unable to defend his own signature, and on a quiet retired engineer too patient to push back. He was wrong about every one of those things. The lesson here is worth saying out loud. The most powerful documents in your life are often the ones nobody else has read in 50 years. If you own old land, an old dam, an old well, an old easement, or an old water right, go pull the paperwork. Know what you actually hold before somebody else decides to build something on it. If you ever had a developer or an HOA try to take something your family worked for, drop a comment and tell us. And if you want to see next week's case, the HOA treasurer who tried to steal a Korean War veteran pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you on the next one.